Hi, and welcome back to the Ygartua Art Chronicles podcast, discovering the extraordinary life and career of artist Paul Ygartua. In this episode, we join Paul and Joanne as they take us through the 1990s. We talk about abstraction, patrons, colours, and more. We start off talking about their time in Sydney, Australia.
Every night we had our mattress on the floor, and every night these bats flew over.
Yeah, that was
millions
incredible.
of bats, massive big bats. These are the fruit bats, you know. They hang in the trees, and
at night they eat
and
their
they just look like Batman, you know. They're just exactly like the invasion of Batman.
So there was Sydney, and then you sort of ticked off a few places, but not was it an artistic journey or not essentially?
Well, yes, because partially we had an exhibition in Sydney.
We did a
jazz club.
Yeah, it was a gallery but also
jazz
a jazz club. It was sort of a jazz gallery, but you know, that first day.
What's it called? The Lizard. The Lizard Jazz Club.
Yeah, Lizard Jazz Club. But that
sounds very cool.
Anton said, yeah.
It was cool. Yeah, it's a great place.
But that guy, sure. Well, I always had my flyers, and Anton said, "Show him your flyer. We were just having a coffee." That's before we even found the apartment. And he said, "Oh, I'll look at it in a minute and I'll join you." Anyways, he comes right out. "Okay, when can you do the show?" I said, "Well, 3 weeks' time is good. Give Paul enough time to paint, right?" So, we stayed. We actually shipped works to that guy.
Yeah, he was good.
I think for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Then he sold the club,
place,
right?
Yeah.
But the Aboriginals, of course, were so interesting. Paul paints every day wherever he is,
the indigenous
right?
people from Australia were just great to paint.
Yeah. So again, we always keep saying full circle, but yeah, that subject matter does.
We had some great stories about Australia because, of course, the pubs are open all night long.
24 hours.
Some are open 24 hours. So we were out a couple of times, Joanne and I and Ton.
And Gordon.
With Gordon, his friend.
From
and
Scotland.
We were drinking till about 1 or 2 in the morning. We're on our way home. And Ton says,
4 in the morning.
Hey, there's a pub, it's still open. Okay, last drink. We stagger in. Joanne fell asleep at the door.
At the door.
On a seat.
Crikey.
Well, he exaggerates, as
if you would do that, Joanne. Exactly.
Right.
As if.
Yeah, I never fall asleep.
That's right. You chatted up the barman, the bouncer.
Oh my gosh! It's all coming out.
That was one place.
I did invite him to the show as well. So every time we went past, then he used to wave, "Hello."
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think he came to the show, but you know, he probably.
All business is all business.
It's always business, yeah.
Exactly.
But going back. To the 90s, of course, once Tal and Anton had left for university, then, when we were in town, I would rent space, many important buildings in town, have space that you can exhibit, or shops that I used to maybe rent for 5 months and, set up a gallery idea. We, at that time, wanted to keep Vancouver for ourselves. At that time, we didn't want to be dealing with anybody else because when we came back, we just want to do what we want to do. When we leave, we're not necessarily going to send work back because we're very busy in, other parts of the world where we're doing exhibitions. So we had kept Vancouver for quite a long time, giving us that freedom. But then, of course, we are still dealing with Quebec City and Ottawa and all across Canada. There is nothing but shows in the world.
Oh yeah, you can keep doing shows forever.
So Tal had changed universities, and she started at Toronto University.
Yeah.
And we had heard about the One of a Kind in Toronto, and so she called us to say, "Hey, I'm doing this." Okay, and then I said, "Well, hey, One of a Kind, we'll look into that, and we can see you at the same time." So that's how the One of a Kind show actually started. We may have done it anyways, but we maybe hadn't.
But they were shows with 50,000 people.
Yeah.
came past you. So,
wow.
I mean, we're talking a lot of incredible possibilities. And we had a big stand. We had 20-foot length stands.
We used to do the spring and the Christmas. And we ended up just the Christmas one, but it included the American Thanksgiving, which is at the end of November.
Very nice.
And for all of us, you know, the Americans are great, but also the Torontonians are like Americans.
They're good, And of course there I was doing a lot of paintings of the jazz. With also a lot of sort of abstract expressionism. So that was something that I kind of got into a lot more with large paintings. And that worked very well for me because a lot of the scenes were Italian scenes. And Toronto has a massive, big Italian presence there. So I was selling lots of Venice and Rome and Portofino.
But maybe you could explain the difference. Paul, for many years...
Well, abstract expressionism, the style, you mean? Yeah.
Expressionism.
What that is instead of a loose, sketchy style, impressionistic style, what I started doing was making the whole background a mixture of colour, first of all. So the background was abstracted completely in blocks of colour or shades of colour, but basically an abstract. And then I overlaid that with quick line work and colour to give, for instance, a scene over the top of it, making the colours be part of the background. And actually that worked out pretty good because you could make something look really interesting with just a few strokes.
Yeah.
And I could do the same with the jazz. I could do like black lined faces over the background, which was wild colours. And then I'd go in and shade areas to make the faces look real and more lifelike. And I could give it a very interesting style, you know.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
Really
it's interesting because I was reading up again about abstract expressionism, that there's various versions of it, and the sort of generally accepted abstract expression is probably more abstract than what the Ygartua version of it is, and the classic for anyone who's out there is stuff like Pollock or things like that, where it's very abstract. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm looking at if people want to look at Ygartua.com, for example, there's a page of it, and there's several examples, and I've seen, knowing your work, I've seen plenty of these before, and there's lots of whether it's Saint-Tropez or Mediterranean towns, that sort of thing.
Well, you can see what I mean.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you mean. Quite.
And then a few strokes over the top, loose, sketchy strokes, and it can become something, And it even has a natural depth to it by putting that background.
But you do have to be able to draw to begin with. You can't be loose with something unless you can already do it realistically, or the impressionistic sketchy version. Without that, then you can never be as fast, and it's so spontaneous.
But it has to be fast. This style is a spontaneous
1
type
hour
of
the
style.
most.
Yeah, no more than 1 hour.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think at the time you weren't into pure abstraction, right? So I think that Tala had mentioned talking about the drawing film, the Lexon and the plexiglass. And I think that relates
that is a completely
to the abstract expressionism, starting with the backdrop, because you did the backdrop with the show from New York, the Montserrat Gallery.
Fine.
Right?
You know the complete difference about this painting on Lexon, which is thick Lexon, not the thin film. They're talking about something nearly an eighth of an inch thick. And what's good about the Lexon is it's unbreakable. It's not like plexiglass. Right. So it can't be broken by dropping it or hitting it or anything. And what the difference in that style is, you don't do the background first. You do the background last.
Quite, yeah.
All the detail is put on first, and then the background is put on, either with a brush or spray or sponge. And this allows you to leave your background till the last minute. And then you decide what background colour you want. You could even change it. You can make it mix. You could do anything you want. But of course, the paint has to be dry, the first part, the drawing part or the first detail part. But what it was a lot of fun because you could kind of doodle a graffiti style with it.
That was wonderful with the reverse on the drawing film.
That was mostly,
so loose.
I did that style mostly with the reverse on drawing film. When I worked on the Lexon, the thick Lexon, I actually did a combination of cutting through a frisket to get some rigidity and sort of graphic feel to it, as well as doing a lot of free hand drawing, kind of loose black ink work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How did you? I mean, anyone who's understanding how you're approaching the two types of medium, you can imagine that for the film, surely if you make an error, that's kind of it. I mean, it's with the normal painting, you go over the top, you go, "Oops, better correct that."
Yeah,
with the Lexon,
you can't change it.
I mean, your style of painting, you're very instinctive, and you go with your flow, and you've got some sort of cerebral, machine that's constantly going.
Well, you've got to know how to draw. That's where drawing comes very important. You've got to know that whatever you're going to draw on it, there are no mistakes. The face may look a little different, or they maybe not quite in proportion, but it's not wrong. In other words, you make the best of even if it's an error in something, you change it to make it better. You can.
But
you can't erase it, but you can go over it.
The errors are good because that's how everything looks more modern.
It's very loose and very spontaneous, and maybe very original because of the fact you can't change anything.
Yeah.
The only choice you have to change is the background at the end.
Yeah.
And you do need that, no matter what. Without the classical background, you really aren't going to be too good in those
you
three
need
mediums. You can do something.
Look, for some styles, there's a lot of people who do abstracts who can't even draw. I mean, anybody, they say they can do an abstract. Well, it's not that easy, but a lot of people do just work with abstracts, and they really aren't very good when it comes to classical drawing or anything like that, If you can do the both, it's an advantage, because then you can mix your style,
But, we always said with Paul, I mean, he just has to keep moving all the time, so he would feel stuck if he wasn't creating, like a new direction.
Right. Well, what happens is I work with a style until I hit if I hit a brick wall, meaning I can't take it any further. I don't keep knocking my head against the wall. I immediately change and do something completely different. Work with another medium, another style, and leave it alone. And sometimes I'll go back to it years later even.
That's crazy,
and maybe I've discovered a new technique I can work into it. But at the time when I've, hit the end of the line with it, I just don't continue with it because it would become boring and monotonous then.
Yeah, but sometimes, like looking at photos from years back, my gosh, like, you never did it again. You only did maybe 3 paintings, and then it was gone.
There's a couple of styles I've only done a few paintings with and didn't go any further with it because I couldn't see anywhere to progress with it, And it wasn't fantastic in the first place, maybe,
But it was an experiment, You have to have a good dose of self-confidence as well to be sure that what you're doing...
Oh, absolutely. That's the answer.
Because,
you're not kidding.
Yeah, especially with the plexi.
Being a Gemini helps. Being a Gemini.
But I mean, that as soon as you have that self-confidence, you have fluidity, and it allows you to become free, I should imagine.
Well, confidence comes from learning at a young age how to survive. Once you know you can survive with your art, there's literally nothing to hold you back, And
what about in these abstracts, particularly, but in all of your painting,